Hello, welcome back to the podcast Journey to Well. My name is Hannah. I am joined today with Marcia Earhart. She is one of my favorite things to talk about is grief, and she is a grief girl. We love talking about it. So I'm very, very excited about this podcast recording, Marcia. Thank you so much for coming on. We were just talking right before I hit record. I said, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. And it's actually one of my favorite questions that I ask on the podcast because I like people to be able to introduce themselves how they would like to introduce themselves, whether that's your accolades, whether that's your schooling, your business, your job, your personality traits,
Mm.
your Enneagram number. You can give us any or all of them, but Marcia, thank you so much for coming on. And yes, please give a brief introduction of who is Marcia? Why are you coming on podcast? What is on your heart to share today? And then we will dive deep into grief conversation.
Oh, well, first of all, I'm a child of God. That just so
Mm,
resonates with me. And I am a wife and mom, which I love both of those roles in my life, as well as I am wildly passionate about the things God has placed within me and love deeply and just desire for people to experience life in its fullness.
mm.
I love the beach, as we were talking about just before we
Oh,
got started. I
yes.
live in Florida. I am a life, grief, trauma, brain, mental health coach, a heart sync minister, and an author and speaker. But honestly, there's nothing that compares to the fact of all the other seasons of my life as to who I am and what I do. So
Mm.
I just love being who God created me to be in every space He puts me in.
Ah, love that. And I read some of your book and you have quite a story and you stepped into some really dark seasons in your life with such grace and gratitude, and I'm really excited to chat with you about that. Um, I've said this before, but I don't talk about grief a ton. So if this is your first time listening to the podcast, such a weird thing to say that I love talking about grief, and I know that you do too, Marcia. Um, I think the reason behind that is because there are certain things that we don't talk a lot about. And one of them, in my opinion, is grief. And you and I, when we chatted before, one of the important things for me to bring light to is grieving not just people who have passed, but living grief as well. And I think you and I talked about when we chatted before of how you as the listener or you as the person grieving, you get to define what grieving is, how long it is, what it looks like, how it feels. You get to define that, not other people. And we have these stereotypes of grief that we really only grieve people that have passed, and you have this amount of time, and then you should be, quote, over it. And that's just not how grief works. So, my first question is what got you interested in talking about grief, writing a book on grief, becoming a heart sync counselor, all of these things? This is really heavy, heavy work. And what brought you to that chapter of your life that I guess you're still in this chapter of your
Yeah.
life that you're in
Yeah.
now?
I think that life prepares us for our calling.
Hmm.
And so I really, from 3.5, grief was a part of my life ongoing. And when I say that, I had 17 losses by the time I was 18, and they were pretty horrific losses. So grief did not define my life, but it was a redefining of my life because what I learned early on in 3.5 is that there's a brevity of life. Someone's here
Yeah.
and then they're gone. And that was while my father was holding me, and I'm looking at my great grandmother in a casket.
Mm.
So it really embedded a memory for me, and it became part of my DNA moving forward as to this is part of life. And I'm very thankful for my parents, Hannah, because they taught me how to grieve. They
Wow.
showed me how to grieve. They were present in people's spaces when they grieved. They knew how to show up. And they also wept when
Mm,
they, were grieving themselves. And I got to watch that process, also be a part of it because some of those things involved all of us. And so as life has continued, and loss is not just people, but that was 17 people. That was not other losses within my life during those 18 years because I had other losses of friends, that changed and just the seasons. Health, I had some health issues during those seasons of pneumonia and having mono repeatedly. And so I was missing out on certain things. And so I feel like we need to know that grief includes so much more
mm,
in our lives. And I, we need to be able to grieve each of those losses
yeah.
when we experience them and incorporate it in the sense that we're moving forward.
Mm,
Because I don't think grief should get to define who we are. I think it should redefine, and it should never have the last word.
mm,
It should only be there to teach us so that we are equipped better. And in the next time, we have more tools. And to me, it's a process of a continuation of growing in that.
mm. Mm, I love that grief shouldn't define us, but it should redefine the way in which we move through life because I would agree in my life, the things that I've had to grieve the hardest or the deepest, it's not something that I want to leave behind. It's a part of you that you move forward with. That's always going
Mhm.
to be, even if we are talking about grieving a loss of a person, it's carrying that person with you. But I do love the breath that you expanded of being sick and missing out on things when you were a child and grieving. For me, a big part of my one of my most recent grief journeys is grieving like a version of myself that I thought that I would be by 31. And it's my life now is so different than 25-year-old me would have thought. And it's way better than I would have ever have imagined. So but it's interesting, right? To have both the the happy and the sad, the light and the darkness, the grief and the joy and the peace. And I'm curious to hear your personal experience with that because you had so many losses before what, the age of 7, you said, or
No,
15?
by 18.
18. Okay.
I had 17 losses
17.
by 18.
Oh, wild. Which also boggles my mind because I do feel like I've experienced grief in so many ways. I haven't actually experienced it so heavily with a loss of a person because I
Mm.
have my parents still, I have my siblings still, so that's just wild to me. But my question is what is that experience? What has that experience been for you in learning really experiencing the both sides because you come out of a spiral of grief, so you experience the high and the low. What has that experience been like for you?
Well, in the book, I think you saw it's very raw, and
Mm,
there's a visceral aspect of grief that we have to allow ourselves to experience.
yeah.
We when we run from it, we're not running from it. It actually embeds in us.
Mm,
So we want to allow ourselves to walk into the lessons it has for us in that space. And from there, and for me, those each of those experiences has brought a richer part of how I live life. It's
mm,
also taken me deeper personally in my relationship with the Lord
mm,
because I would not have been able to walk in that without his presence holding me, carrying me. Honestly, there are
mm,
times that we are carried.
mm,
And I do believe when we have felt And for me, losing a child was as if someone had taken all of my skin off of my body and I was raw
Yeah.
and just vulnerable to the air. And I just could feel it all over me. And it hurt in the very depths of my soul in ways I've never experienced before.
Mm.
But on the other side of that, there was this incredible love of the Lord that lifted me, carried me, held me, met me, cried with me,
Mm.
and infused his breath because I couldn't even breathe. And there's such dichotomies. We see both sides of it in that moment where there's this excruciating pain, and then there's this moment of memory that brings me to laughter.
Mm.
And so that's part of it and incorporating it into my very being that this is something that I have. Nobody can take it. And I can have this safely here,
Mm.
but I've got to deal with all the emotions that are being brought up and bubbling to the top. And I feel when we don't do that, we're denying ourselves something really incredibly beautiful in the process of this life.
Mm. I heard a quote one time and it said, when we push down our emotions or when we run away or when we don't allow ourselves to feel our emotions, we think we're burying them, but they're
Mhm.
really just buried alive. And
That's
they're
right.
going to come back up,
They are.
probably in an inopportune moment. um, and they are going to come because they're still living and they need to be witnessed and experienced. And I am curious how.
Well, I want to say something. They're not just going
Go.
to come back alive, they're going to haunt you.
Ooh, yeah.
It's a haunting that's in you that you keep trying to be busier and run from that. That's the haunting aspect. Then it will come back
Yeah.
when all of a sudden, because you haven't chosen to step into, it's going to find you. So go on and be gracious enough with yourself and give yourself permission. I need to grieve in this season.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. It's gonna haunt you. I love that. You're sharing kind of you allowed yourself to viscerally feel it and to move through it and allow yourself to feel the breadth of emotions. I am such a tangible person. And this was a question that I had a lot when I began my own grief spiral journey. Um, how do you do it? How do you allow yourself when it feels? Because for me, I recall sometimes it just feels so heavy and so big and that's scary that I was afraid that I would get stuck in it.
So I want to address that because I initially said to one of my friends, I feel if I let myself feel this emotion, I won't come out alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was function who was speaking that.
Mm.
Because function, and so let me explain, function is what we get up and it's the everyday that we do in our lives that we get up, brush our teeth, go to the bathroom. It's kind of, we can do that in autopilot, which we don't want to do that. But a lot of people go in autopilot
Mm.
when they have grief.
Mm.
And so that can be dangerous. But function is the one that was saying that. But my true self said, press into Jesus. And the Holy Spirit said, I need you to let me be present with you. I'm holding you. We need to do this. And I'm going to do it with you. And he did. And but that function side of me really thought if I allow myself, I won't come out alive.
Mm.
It'll change me. I won't be able to ever get up off this floor.
Mm-hmm.
If I let my emotions go where I am allowing for the tears and screaming. And I remember the day that I went in my room and I got a pillow And I wept and I screamed in that pillow. And why did I scream in the pillow, people? Because I had children at the house. I had children at the house. I did not want to cause further trauma for them. So it was important for me to release, but I screamed and just screamed because it was part of just letting out the pain.
Mm,
I wasn't screaming at anyone, just screaming to release what was so bound in me. And I probably did that for an hour.
mm,
And then all of a sudden, I just felt this breaking open of, I'm going to be okay because
mm,
the Holy Spirit said, you're going to be okay.
yeah.
And it was the beginning of really embracing the emotions that come with this story of grief.
Mm,
And I also knew enough that if I didn't give myself permission and I didn't allow myself, that my body would keep the score and it would go into the parts of my body and that it could cause sickness,
mm,
it could cause emotional and mental problems because it happened. And I wanted to live this out as healthily as I possibly could. But you asked how. I called on Jesus and Father and Holy Spirit continually, people. I did not let them go from my presence, nor were they leaving my
mm,
presence. I needed everything they had because I did have children. I also had a husband who was not handling this grief well.
yeah.
And so I was like, Lord, I want to be able to walk this in the manner that you have, but I have to have you. And I became so dependent on the Lord.
Mm,
There just wasn't anything in that that I would leave or his just presence was just always, and I feel it even to this day. He just doesn't leave me.
mm,
He's with me. And so there's a component of grief that everybody feels, and it's loneliness
yeah.
when you're grieving.
Yeah.
I never felt alone, but there is a loneliness because our grief is specific to each of us. I really can't help you understand the intimate details of my grief story
Mm,
in the way that I experience and feel it. What I can do is tell you from the lens, this is how I walked through it, this is what I felt. But the reality is, in that moment, each of us have to understand nobody's ever going to be in our shoes.
mm,
Doesn't matter what experiences we have, but it does give us a greater capacity for compassion for other people when they're in their own story, to have no judgment
yeah.
and to be present in that space.
Mm. You said something interesting that I never felt alone, but I felt lonely. And there's such a difference
There
between
is.
such a similar word. There's a big difference between being alone and feeling lonely. And you can
Yes,
feel lonely with people all
yes.
around you. And
And I did. I did.
you
I'm
do.
sure you did too.
Yep.
I mean, when you're because this really has to be dealt with between myself and the Lord.
Yep.
Nobody else really, and he's really the healer
Yeah.
of all that we're going through. But yeah, so you can be all around many people, and
Mm.
that loneliness is still very present, but you're not alone.
Mm. Well, and it's interesting what you said too about realizing that I will never fully understand what you went through, and you will never fully understand what I've gone through. And I've heard people say these sentences of like, you just don't understand. And I heard this sometime, I don't even remember where, but the person was like, yeah, you're right. I will never understand. And there's almost this beauty in realizing and recognizing that
Mm,
because it's like this weight of Oh, okay. I don't have to prove to you or explain to you everything that I went through. Hopefully, the person
Mm,
that you're talking to, and this is where I want to get into the being not being alone, make sure that you're not alone and make sure that you find someone that has the capacity to understand this difference of I don't have to understand what you went through
hmm.
to hold you through it
That's it.
because we do need our physical community as well. We need our support system
Yes,
in this realm as well to hold us through whatever we're going through, whatever grief we're experiencing. And that learning that is almost like this weight of, oh, I don't, that's okay. They're not ever going to experience what I experience, even if we went through the same thing, right? Even if we
correct,
lost the same family member, the way
correct.
that I grieve is going to be different than the way that my sister grieves because we've lived different
Yeah,
lives, even if we grew up together. So
that's
I
right.
hope that it's this permission slip. Can we allow it to be this permission slip of, oh, they can they can still hold me through this and it's okay. One of the things that you said that was very interesting was finding the balance between we can be in grief too long, we can stay in grief, and there's a balance to be found. And so, what I was going to say is it's okay to feel lonely. I would argue it's okay to feel lonely.
Yes,
That's a normal feeling, especially
yes.
when you went through a big loss. But finding that, I'm curious if you can kind of share, expand on that of finding that balance. How do we know that we've been staying in grief too long?
So I'm going to use my own life as kind of a point place.
Yeah.
So when we lost our son, the Lord said, I need you to go dance. Okay. So my son's friends in law school, they would call and we would all go out dancing. And some people would say no, what I found is it was an amazing way of release and of filling in joy and being alive.
Mm,
And I think we have to have these experiences when we're grieving something that has died within our lives,
mm.
even dreams, because
Yeah.
dreams are I mean, everybody kind of looks at their life at different junctures and goes, well, those dreams are never going to be fulfilled because I'm at this point. And so I feel like we have to look and say, am I allowing myself to go and still live in the midst of this death I'm feeling?
Hmm.
And see, the Lord made sure I did,
Hmm.
but I was obedient to it. And my son's friends were amazing. They made sure, hey, come on, let's go dancing. And we would have a blast and just, but I began to need that expression
Yeah.
as it was another aspect of a releasing, but receiving at the same time.
Hmm.
And when you are facing, how do you know it's too long? When it starts to define your life. It's defining your decisions. It's defining your choices. It's defining whether or not you're willing to do anything any differently. Because the reality is, I died in that moment when my son died. Our family died to who we were. That family will never resurrect. Why? Because he's not here. We're not going to be the same. When my second son was murdered, we all died yet again. We're not going to be those people again. And you know what, Hannah? I don't want to be that person again because they're not here. That space is held for them, honey.
Wow.
And I think if grievers can come to understand there's a sacred space
Mm,
for whatever you're grieving, and it doesn't have to look the same
mm,
in your life. Because see, I think we're people that like to have things look the same instead of embracing the new. And in scripture, the Lord talks about, can you perceive I'm doing a new thing?
mm.
Well, new things kind of are uncomfortable, aren't they?
Yeah.
When we go work out and the body hadn't been working out for a while, I can tell you it's really uncomfortable. But it's
Yeah.
the same way with our spiritual muscles. It's the same way with anything that we're doing and activating. It's uncomfortable. But that's what we need to do is to realize there are things that were and they're not going to be again.
Mm,
And that's okay. I don't want them to be again. But
mm,
there are things yet to come. And I want to embrace what is and is to come with the fullness that I have. So I think that we can look at grieving. There are two sides. You can grieve with hope, or you can have a spirit of grief come over you. A spirit of grief consumes your entire life and it brings on a depression and a despair. Then you've been in grief too long and we need some professional help.
wow. Wow.
And there is a difference. And I saw that lived out in my husband
Mm,
as he went in despair. He was in a spirit of grief. I was in the grieving with hope.
mm,
And we had this conversation. Okay, you're in despair, you're in the pit, and I want to be of encouragement to you. And so your audience knows this is a good 2 years out, everyone. This isn't like we're fresh in it. Okay. I don't want you to send poor Hannah notes and say that was horrible, that she was being cruel to her husband. No, I love my husband, but I'm also cheering my husband on to be healthy and to make healthy choices in his grief. And it was penetrating in areas of his own health.
yeah.
And so he had to put in some other places. He had to put in tools in other places and start acknowledging the places where he needed to work on and to and really to change the mindset. And so when we talk about grief, I think it doesn't do a good service to us if we leave out everything begins in the mind.
Mm,
So if you have negative thoughts and you keep thinking the negative thoughts after someone or a situation has happened, then what happens is that's a toxicity that goes in your body because your body lines up with your thoughts, everybody. They're one and the same. So if you're saying negative things, your body's aligning with it. If you're speaking life, I am healing,
yeah.
then your body is lining up with I am healing. And God is doing an amazing work in and through this pain.
Mm,
Then guess what? God is doing an amazing thing in and through that work. And so we have to speak life over the places where the enemy has come in to speak death and to take you into the death of whatever it is
mm,
that that grief has brought about. And so we have to be very cognizant of those two areas in our lives. Am I living from the tree of life, or am I stagnated and just sitting in the tree of death?
mm, mm. That's a great, I love that grief with hope and then living and being overcome by the spirit of grief. And I really love that, felt very palpable to be able to navigate. Is this something that I'm need to seek professional help for, or is this
Mhm.
something that I'm moving through? Both ways are okay,
That's right. But
wherever
we
you
don't want
are.
depression to the point where it changes and alters your life. And
Yeah.
that's when it becomes dangerous. That's when you've been sitting too long.
Yeah.
And you've got to get professional help and you've got to make sure that you don't keep going
Yeah.
in that path of darkness.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to talk about the title of your book. We've referenced it a few times, and I'm just obsessed with the title of your book. So if you could share, and I must know how you arrived at the title of your beautiful book.
Okay, it's Gripping Grace in the Garden of Grief,
Mm,
a place for the heart. So I was gripping
mm,
tightly
mm.
to everything that the Father had for me. I was holding on, gripping, and I felt like that's all I had
Yeah.
because it is.
Yeah.
And in that gripping, I felt the pouring out of His grace over my grief. It was a continual bathing, honestly.
Wow.
And The garden, there's a segment in my book on the garden, and the Lord brought me to a gate, and He said, "You're welcome to come in.
Mm,
It's your garden with me, and you get to choose." And I chose to walk in, and the version that's in my book is more condensed in the scope of all that He did
mm,
in that garden, because that's where my tears really fell out onto the ground of that hard soil.
mm,
And I started seeing everything that He does within our grief,
mm.
because He is so specific to each of us, so tender, so merciful. And He asked me throughout, "Are you ready for this?"
Wow.
Then sometimes it was like, "I don't know that I am." And He said, "Well, what kind of questions do you have?" And I would ask questions. And then I was ready.
Mm,
And so everyone, there's a garden for everybody. It's going to look differently, which is so amazing, because we all are going to have different things within our garden. And a place for the heart, I think in grief, we all need to know there is a place for our heart
mm,
to be at rest, to dwell in safety,
mm.
in safety. Because most people feel there aren't safe places for them in their grief.
Absolutely. Yeah,
So, yeah.
absolutely. It's a I already said palpable. It's a palpable. I think one of the things that I appreciate so much about your book is you could feel it. I could feel you. And it's interesting that you said, I'll never experience exactly what you went through, but you did an incredible job of, and it's not even like a kudos thing. It's you were so raw and authentic, and you could feel that in the
Mm,
book. And being able to open yourself up and be that open and raw and vulnerable in such a beautiful, almost poetic way. I feel like your book is a poem.
mm,
Um, allows I just kept getting like these visions of people reading this that went through something similar, losing a child, having, losing a child and maybe having it takes such a toll on a marriage, not from experience that I know this, but I know this.
mm.
Um, and I just kept imagining how healing it really would be for so many people. And it is healing the way that you just really cracked open and shared that cracking open. That's not, I would imagine it's not an easy thing to do, but it's so valuable and it really does minister to so many people because again, going back to the alone thing, you're not alone. You're not listening to this if you are someone that has lost someone, no matter who it was, or it's a loss of a dream, if it's not a physical person, you're not alone. You're not the only person that has experienced this. You're the only person that experienced it the way that you experience it
That's
right
right.
now,
That's right.
but you're not the only one. And to be able to have this tool is really what it is to use in that healing journey. It was really beautiful. Thank you for sharing it with me, and I highly recommend reading it for anyone who's listening. If you would like a tool to support you to carry that hope through
Mm, mm.
through grief is really really important. It's a beautiful message, just regardless of the book, to have some tool to
Mm.
carry yourself
Thank you.
through. And grace is, it's one of I have a tattoo. So my grief journey, I didn't write a book, I got a tattoo. And I have a tattoo on my forearm, and it says, "The beauty of grace is," and has dot, dot, dot. And
Mm,
to me, grace is there's so many things, and that's why there's a dot dot dot, because there's not
Yeah.
one thing about the
No, you
beauty
can't
of
define
grace.
it. No.
And you can't define it.
No.
There's
No.
nothing that I could put after that, but you learn you learn grace when you are experiencing grief, and that is one of the most powerful lessons I've learned in my life, and I would argue that we probably learn in this lifetime, is to
Yeah.
experience grace.
Mhm.
And that's wild.
And
It
I
can't be
think grief
defined it.
brings us into layers of that grace.
Yeah.
So you ask
Yeah.
why the grace? Because there are layers of grace that's poured in and over us. I
Yeah.
mean, and it's just like, whoa, I didn't even know this aspect because it's something new. And I need you to know, I never intended to write a book, everybody. And with this is the Lord, this was about my experiences, and I wrote to the Lord. Everything
Mm,
was written to him. It was kind of like my journal and per
mhm,
se. And the Lord said, you need to make that into a book
mm.
because I want people to know that there is a companion for them.
Yeah.
That's exactly what he said.
Mm, mm. And you feel that. You feel that in the book. And it does feel like a journal. That's a great way. It was
Mhm.
like just reading your diary entries. It was really very intimate.
Oh,
Very cool experience.
thank
Anyway,
you.
yeah. So speaking of support and tools, I know that you have a sanctuary. It's called Sterling Rose Sanctuary. I know it's in the works, but I would love for you to share a little bit about it because, again, I think one of the important things for me on my podcast is to share tools and share information and give people these ideas, even if they're not in Florida and they don't ever make it to see
That's right.
you, you're going to find similar tools elsewhere. And we don't know what we don't know until we're introduced to it. So please share because I love, love, love your vision and your journey.
Well, the Sterling Rose Sanctuary is nonprofit, and we actually serve all over the United States and in 6 countries.
Mm.
We do everything online.
Yes.
There are some people that we meet with that want to meet, but the healing, the delivering and healing aspect can be done online on a phone call.
Mm.
And it's been amazing because the reach we've had has been beyond what I could have ever imagined.
Mm.
And to see the healing that the Lord brings to each person. And we do work with people that are not believers. And so we have various modalities in which we work with you. We have a heart healing aspect, which I'm a heart sync minister. And so we really bring in some of those very wounded and emotional parts that need to come in and have healing so that you can return to joy quickly.
Mm.
So, we're talking about emotional parts that are negative, emotional parts, anger, unforgiveness, shame, guilt, uh, anxiety that can really keep you from returning to the fullness of joy. And we work through with you and we help you know some good boundaries when you're grieving because people unfortunately overstep and take advantage of people grieving. So we kind of go through with you um, some things that you may want to put in place to protect yourself and to protect your finances, even though I know that may sound a little odd, but yes, unfortunately, many people are taken advantage of when they're grieving financially. So we have these things. We want to help you have the best healthy experience grieving. So we encourage you to have a very healthy diet without sugar and carbs so that the body can heal and detox because the sugar and carbs actually prevent the the toxins releasing. It clogs it up in the liver. And so we don't want that. So we work with you neurologically, we work with you physically, we work with you spiritually. This is about your mind, body, soul, and spirit. We don't leave a component out. And we have so many amazing resources for you and tools to equip you. As as always, we are continuing to add on to this past year. I just became a brain coach, which is affiliated with the Amen Clinic. So I'm
Mm.
working hand in hand with them to help people that need some more neurological, maybe in-depth things because of medications they've been on that really maybe misdiagnosis and components where overthinking isn't stopping, medication isn't working. So
Mm,
that's really exciting. So I'm doing everything I can to be the best to bring to people that need it. And the Sterling Rose Sanctuary, we are in the process of fundraising to have a physical place, which will really be just for an individual, couple, or family, simply one at a time, 1 to 3 days, or
mm,
3 to 5 days, 3 to 5 days, where they come to the site and we get to implement other tools
mm,
in person. And the other tools would be some somatic releasing with exercising. We have several different components that we want to include art therapy, music therapy, and because everybody doesn't grieve the same way and express themselves the same way. So
yeah.
we want to provide other modalities. There'll be a garden for people
Mm,
to be able to sit in, meditate, pray, and just have a sense of healing. And we have a butterfly and room, a thorn and rose room.
mm,
And those rooms are very specific to healing. So the rose and thorn room is that we look at the thorns and we address them in order that you have healing from those thorny places so
mm,
you can appreciate each petal on the rose. And then for the butterfly room, we look at traditions and things that used to be, and we're trying to see in this season what is triggering to you. And if it is, could we just leave that there for now? And could we embrace something new, like for Christmas? If y'all had a certain tradition at Christmas time or at a birthday or any kind of event that had this certain tradition behind it, could we look at doing something else so that everybody can walk in a sense of healing? And if it's something you really need, but it's triggering to everyone else, how
mm,
can we get that for you that everybody else can still walk forward without being re-triggered? So
mm,
we address triggers and we do that so that people can understand what is healing to you, Hannah, may be triggering to me. But because I don't want to do something that's important to you doesn't mean that I don't love you and I'm not willing to support you, but I'm understanding that that's triggering to me and I just can't do that and enter that space.
yeah.
So it's learning grace with each other of how to love well in this journey.
Mm,
So we really want people to come alongside of us at the Sterling Rose Sanctuary to make this a reality this year.
mm,
We've been fundraising. We really are doing the push this year to finally get this on home and get our place and get our feet and get our people there.
yeah. It's gorgeous. That vision, that dream. It's going to be such a healing place. And I thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing the whole vision and the journey because it's going to be it's going to be so amazing. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank
For people who would like to stay connected with you, follow up with you, where can they learn more? Whether they're looking to support or they're looking for support, where can they find you and connect?
They can go to www.thesterlingrosesanctuary.us. And the reason the US is because it takes us as a community to restore and to be present with people to heal.
Mm. Mm. Yay.
Yeah.
Oh, Marcia, thank you so much for coming on. I have one final question for you to close. If you were standing on a stage right now and you had one message that you could share with the world, what would that message be?
No matter what happens to you, you can breathe again, move again, and live again fully in your created design. So go and do it well.
Mm, that was so concise. It's like you've done this before.
But I haven't, but thank you.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This was a really beautiful conversation, and I appreciate your wisdom and your vulnerability so much.
Well, I love being here and I've loved talking because this is a conversation, as you well know, people do not want to talk about. So I thank you for having what is considered in our society, unfortunately, a hard conversation.
Mm.
I hope that as the years go by, and very quick years, like by that I mean short years, that we really, this is a conversation that becomes on the table and is celebrated, and people feel comfortable because all of us are going to experience losses throughout this life. So, wouldn't it be better to be well equipped to walk this journey and to be able to be encouraging to one another and
Mm.
celebrate the things with each other, those milestones as we face them?
Mm, absolutely. And this is not a hard conversation with you, so let this be the first of many of yes, seemingly hard conversations. Thank you for making it so easy and enjoyable.
Thank you, honey. I appreciate it.